Hi there, I'm Mike, I'm a philosophy teacher at TRC, and this video is just going to be a short introduction to AQA A-level philosophy. So if you're looking at joining us in September to study philosophy, then this video will run through some of the things about the course that you need to know. If you're looking at studying philosophy elsewhere in the UK, then this video might also give you a bit of a rundown of the course and some of the things you can expect. Or if you're just generally interested in the subject, then this video will go through some of the questions that we often ask in philosophy and some of the ways that we approach those. This video is going to cover a couple of different things. It's first going to talk about why we actually might study philosophy, what some of the reasoning behind it is, what some of the interesting things about the subject are. We're going to look in a little bit of detail at the kind of things we actually cover in philosophy, so the content of the course. We're going to look at the exam layout briefly, and then I just want to give you a few warnings about philosophy as a course as well. So why might we want to study philosophy? Well, philosophy is a subject like no other A-level. There are no other subjects where you ask the kind of questions that you do in philosophy and the way that you do in philosophy. And there's no other subject that's assessed quite the same as philosophy is either. It's a subject which you're asked to undertake an examination of yourself, the world around you, reality itself. And the questions we ask all have things to do with those different discussions. We look for truth, we look for what kind of things we can actually know for sure, and in doing so we take time to analyse our own viewpoints and take time to analyse the viewpoints of different historical philosophers as well. Studying philosophy means you need to be able to analyse your own views, to analyse the views of other people in your class, and to be able to assess those views and evaluate those views based on different arguments and ideas. To decide which you think is the correct one ultimately. It is a difficult subject, it's time consuming, and it's definitely going to make your brain hurt, but it's also hugely rewarding and it will give you an insight into questions that you don't really get a chance to consider anywhere else in the academic system. So what do we actually cover in philosophy? Well, half of the first year in philosophy is on a topic called epistemology, also known as the theory of knowledge. And in epistemology, we cover questions like, when we say we know something, what do we actually mean by that? Is it any different than just believing that something happens to be true? Or does it require more than just a true belief? We ask questions like, can we actually trust our senses to give us knowledge about the world around us? So we might say that, well, we can know that this table in front of me exists because I can see it, but we also know that our senses can be tricked sometimes. So if that's the case, what does that mean for my knowledge of this table in front of me? Is it possible that they could be being tricked now? We ask questions like, do we gain knowledge by experience? Do we only gain knowledge of the world through actually experiencing the world? Or is there some knowledge that we are born with? Or can we work things out through reason? And ultimately, is there anything that we can know for certain? Or are we in fact doomed to just say that there are things we're pretty sure about, but we can't actually know anything at all? Once we've finished epistemology, which will happen around Christmas time, we'll move on to ethics. Now, ethics, if you've done RS at GCSE, will be something that you might have covered there. You might have done applied ethics, looking at things like the environment, crime, animal rights and things like that, and discussing what religions might have to say about those things and why. But here we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to ask questions like, what are the different ways of approaching ethical dilemmas? So those things that you might have done at GCSE. But then we're going to go on and look at what the most effective way of deciding what right or wrong is in general might be. Is it to do with what most people might say is the right thing, or what produces the most happiness for the most people? Or is it to do with a particular set of rules that we have to follow? Or is it just about trying to be a good person? Which of those things has good arguments in favour of it being a good ethical theory, and which of those things has problems or weaknesses that might mean it's not, or they're not a good ethical theory? We're also going to go even deeper, and we're going to ask how we actually use ethical language in conversation. Are we referring to real properties of the world? Are we referring to facts? Are ethics, are terms like right or wrong, factual terms? When I say murder is wrong, am I meaning murder is factually wrong? And if so, what type of fact is that? Or am I actually just talking about my own opinion or my own beliefs there? What do we mean when we say something is right or wrong? So those are the two main topics that we'll cover in first year. Moving on to second year, the first thing that we look at is philosophy of religion. And this is the second part of the course that some of you might have already come across in high school. Essentially, we're looking at why people might believe in God, or what reasons people might have for not believing in God. This unit on the spec is called the metaphysics of God for that reason. We're going to look at the arguments in favour of faith and the arguments against faith. And we're also going to talk about language again here. We're going to look at religious language and look at how people refer to God and whether God might be a metaphor for something else, or whether when people talk about God and faith, they're actually referring to something factual. And if so, whether or not that can be even proven, or whether it's something that's impossible to prove. Finally, at the end of second year, we'll move on to a topic called philosophy of mind. And philosophy of mind is actually fairly simple when it comes to what we're going to cover. We're just going to very simply ask, what am I? When I refer to myself, or when I refer to I, as I just have done. The final topic that we'll cover in second year is called philosophy of mind, or the metaphysics of mind. And this topic asks a very simple question. What am I? So when I refer to myself, as I am doing now, what is it that I'm actually referring to? Am I talking about my brain? Am I talking about a soul? Am I talking about a set of memories or a personality? What is it that makes me me? And what is my mind? Is it something non-physical? Is it something physical? Can I access it if I just cut open my head? Or is it something that can't be accessed by anybody else at all? And what do these questions mean for the way that we live our lives? What does it mean for things like belief in life after death? What does it mean for things like whether or not computers will ever actually be able to think? All of these questions are stuff that we're going to cover in philosophy of mind as we look at 6 different approaches to the very simple question, what am I? But once we finish that, that's actually the content for the course covered. There are 4 topics, as you've seen across the course: epistemology, ethics, philosophy of religion, and philosophy of mind. And then at the end of that, you will in fact do 2 exams. Now, to talk just briefly about some of the skills that you need to be able to study philosophy effectively. Philosophy isn't a subject where you are just going to be learning lots and lots of different theories and then having to go into an exam and regurgitate what you've learnt in lesson. It's actually about learning those theories and then engaging with them in a little bit of detail. You need to be able to talk about them, yes, but you also need to be able to say why you think certain theories are wrong, and indeed why you think others are correct, what arguments you think are effective and what arguments you think are ineffective, and why. And ultimately, you are arguing for your own opinion here. Now, what that means in practice is that you could write an exam and get an A, and then the person next to you could write a completely different answer in their exam and also get an A, as long as you have both effectively argued for your viewpoints. This is something that is covered in other subjects. It is something that is done in other subjects. In humanities, in particular, in things like history, you are going to be arguing for particular viewpoints or particular sources when it comes to the exam. But it's only philosophy that focuses on those arguments and focuses on developing that method of arguing in the way that it does. In other words, as I've said, you need to effectively argue for your own ideas here. Now, what does this mean in the exam? What type of exam are we going to be looking at here? How's the exam laid out? Well, there are 2 exams that you are going to complete at the end of your second year. The first exam is on the first year content, epistemology and ethics. The second exam is on religion and mind. Now, there's no way of beating around this. Each exam is 3 hours long. Half of the paper, or half of each paper, sorry, is dedicated to each individual topic. And what that means in practice is that each topic is worth about 25% of your final grade. Now, I'm well aware that a lot of you will be balking at the idea that the exam is 3 hours long, but that is there so you have time to actually do philosophy. If you go into the exam and you're writing for 3 hours straight, then you've probably not taken the subject on board as you should have done. The exam is 3 hours long, so you have time to actually think and consider what you're going to write in your answers, and to practice philosophy and to plan your answers, particularly for the longer questions. So how's the exam laid out? Well, each topic will have questions weighted as so. There'll be one 3-mark question, there'll be two 5-mark questions, and there'll be one 12-mark question. And those are all AO1 questions. They're all about your knowledge and understanding. They'll be asking you to outline particular arguments or to outline particular criticisms. There will also be for each topic a 25-mark essay. Now this is the AO2 part of your exam. This is the analysis and evaluation. And it's here you need to do all those things that I was talking about on the previous slide. You need to be able to talk about different philosophers' views and tell me why they are correct or why you think they are wrong, and ultimately what you think about a particular answer. Now, it's worth noting here, before I talk about timing, that if you add up the marks, the essay is worth the same amount of marks as the shorter questions for each topic. And what that means in practice is that being able to argue and being able to evaluate and analyse stuff is going to be really, really valuable when it comes to the final marks in your exam. It's absolutely something you need to consider. You can't get away with going into this exam and just going, here's all the stuff I learned in lesson. You need to actually be able to engage with that information. Timing is absolutely key in philosophy as well. You need to be aware of how long you have left, because ultimately you're doing 10 questions in 3 hours for each exam. But you need to know how long you've got left, how long you should be taking to write your answers, but also, as I said before, taking that time to actually plan your answers as well. You should not be writing for 3 hours straight. You need to use that time effectively to achieve the highest levels. Now, there's a couple of things I just want to cover before we go any further that I think you need to be aware of if you're considering taking A-level philosophy. First, despite what the rumours might suggest, it is not a DOS subject. Philosophy is one of the more difficult A-levels that you can do. It's up there with physics and mathematics when it comes to the actual achievement level that you need to hit in order to do well in philosophy. You will be expected to work hard at understanding all this information, and you will be expected to put the time in, particularly if you feel like you're struggling with anything. I will do as much as I can to possibly help you, but it's ultimately on you here. You need to put the effort in to make sense of this information. It's a subject that's going to require a lot of reading and writing. We primarily assess through essays, and students are going to be expected to read a decent amount each week, including outside of lesson in their independent learning time. We're also going to be doing a lot of practice essays and writing in lesson as well, so that's something you need to be aware of. If you are the type of person that doesn't particularly like essays, then philosophy is absolutely not a subject that you want to consider, because essays are a major, major part of this subject. It's not just about your opinion. You need to be able to talk about what famous philosophers and their arguments say and state, and going into an exam and just saying this is what I think and leaving it at that won't be enough. As I've said all the way through this PowerPoint, you need to be able to argue effectively for what you think, and that might mean saying why you think your viewpoint is correct, but it also might mean showing why you think other viewpoints are wrong. That all being said, as I've said before, philosophy is a subject that is unlike any other, and if you're interested in some of the questions that I've mentioned in this PowerPoint, then philosophy might be absolutely a subject that you want to consider. It's going to help you develop high-level thinking. It's really, really valuable as a subject to set you up for university level, because the method that we use when it comes to approaching essays in philosophy, that evaluation and that analysis, is something that you do in almost any academic subject at university level. Because you want to be able to develop explanation, discussion, arguing and evaluation skills. This is not a subject where you can go into it and say, I'm going to be a philosopher, that's my job. But it is a subject where you're going to learn some skills that are going to be really, really useful across the board in lots of different areas. And it's going to be really, really useful in a lot of different careers as well. Things like lawyers, politics, journalism, even marketing in business have all had links to philosophy and have all said that philosophy is useful as a subject in those areas. Medicine, when it comes to ethics and the police, things like that are going to be useful. Analysts, even teachers and university lecturers have all found philosophy useful because it's about presenting your ideas. Even if you decide you don't want to teach philosophy or you don't want to lecture in philosophy, it's still a useful subject because you are delivering ideas and delivering information in a way that you hope people understand, and obviously that's something that is useful in teaching, and it's something that is useful at university as well. That's it. Thanks for listening. If you've got any questions about anything that I've said in this video, then please don't hesitate to drop them in a comment below and I'll do my best to answer them as effectively as I can. Please share, like, follow these videos, turn on the notifications because I'm going to be uploading a bunch of videos about philosophy and about RS over the coming months. Indeed, stuff that you will be using in lessons as well. So if you want to give yourself a heads up on some of that information, please check out some of the videos that will be coming on this channel. If you've got time, please check out Alan History Nerd on YouTube as well. He's one of the other humanities teachers at TRC. He leads on history and politics, and there are tons of really, really interesting videos on those areas on his channel, so please check that out if you've got time. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Hope you have a lovely summer. Have a good one. Bye.